There was a young man who was stranded on a desert island. He'd been there for more than 3 years. At least the best of his knowledge had been over 3 years. And every day, he would sit on the shoreline and he would stare out into the ocean. He would stare at the horizon, just waiting, just hoping, just praying that a ship would come into his sight and so he could be rescued. Well, he sat there day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. No ship. No ships anywhere in sight. No planes flying overhead. It seemed like he was going to be stranded on that island forever. So he got really good at learning how to make a fire and making it very quickly, just in case that day arrived. So he had this little stack of wood here, all piled up. He had his rocks, old school Boy Scout method, right? Plenty of time to practice getting those flints clicking together and get a spark and fan the flames. You know what? It paid off. Because one day when he was looking out, staring at the horizon, he's just begging that there would be a ship come into sight, and there was. And he gets excited without missing a beat. He jumps up and he starts working on making that fire, and he sees a spark, and he fans it into flame, and it's flaming up, and he grabs some brush, and he puts it on top of it, and he's getting this really, really big cloud of smoke, and it's filling the air, and you can probably see it for miles and miles. And sure enough, he's staring at that ship, and they signal him with some lights, and they sound the horn. He knows he's free, he's rescued, it's time. Yes, they saw him. And so the captain and a few of the crew members, they jump in a small boat, they speed to him, and they get on the shore, and they come up, and they give him a big hug. And the captain notices there are 3 huts. He says, What's going on with this? What's that? What's that hut right there? The guy says, that's my house. That's been my home. The whole time I've been stranded on this island. That's my home. Captain says, all right, well, what's that one in the middle? That is my church. That is my church. Captain says, wow, that is really wonderful that you can keep your faith this whole time. What's the other hut? The guy says, it's the church I used to go to. That guy had a problem, didn't he? He had more problems than we can discuss this morning. But he had a problem with this church, and his solution was just to go to a different church, right? The problem with that, the main problem, is he was the only person on the entire island. So it's pretty clear the problem wasn't the church, the problem was him. Now I know it's just a silly illustration, and it's not real, it's just made up, but it does beautifully illustrate the poem that I found a couple days ago. I want to share it with you. This is what it says. If you want to have the kind of church, like the kind of church you like, you need not pack your bags and start a long hike. You'll only find what you left behind. For there's really nothing new. It's a knock at yourself when you knock your church, because it ain't the church, it's you. Someone once said that church would be such a wonderful place if it were one for all the people. Let's face it, we have problems in churches, don't we? I want to tell you, every church has problems. There's not a single church in existence today or ever that doesn't have problems or has never experienced problems. There are problems even in this church. Every single church has problems because guess what? We have this flesh that wants to war against the spirit. It's a spiritual battle that we fight on a constant basis. And sometimes the flesh ends up winning just a little bit more. And so it shouldn't be any surprise that we have problems in church. In fact, the text that was read by Steve this morning, 1 Corinthians. Boy, if there's anything we've discussed over the past year I've been here, we've looked at that church in Corinth. We've looked at those guys repeatedly. That was a really messed up church. There is a lot that we can glean from them, a lot of knowledge that we can gain. We can see how to not do things, and we can see how to do things. They had a problem. First and foremost, that church in Corinth had a problem. And their problem was they complained and they argued about everything. I mean, everything. Boy, they would argue about their potluck meals. They would argue about who was baptized by whom. They would argue about church discipline. They would argue about who had the greatest spiritual gifts or the best spiritual gifts. I mean, just on and on and on. They argued about anything and everything. You know, I talked about that church in Corinth long ago, many years ago. I shared with the congregation that I was at. I said, you know what, I was young, and I still kind of feeling kind of young, but I had hair. Here we go. I had hair. No, that's terrible. It was probably about 7 years ago. Right? I was new in preaching. I was still trying to find my way, and not really thinking through that too much, because I walked up and said, you know what, if I was there, if I'd have been a member of that congregation, I'm not talking about preachers, if I'd have been a member of that congregation there in Paul's day, boy, I'd have taken my family anywhere else on a Sunday. Anywhere. I wouldn't have stayed. I would have stayed there for a moment longer than I had to. Not a split second, not a heartbeat longer than I had to be there. I would have packed up my family and we would have hit the road and moved on. I would have given up. Like that. If that's what that's about. Because guess what? Monday through Saturday, we experience that, don't we? Complaining and negative and arguing and fussing and all these things. And Sunday in church, that's not the place. We're supposed to be united. We're supposed to be one in Christ, as Christ is one in the Father. Right? And it doesn't necessarily happen. And so I wouldn't have stayed. I'd have gone long ago. But you know what? The beautiful thing is, God didn't give up. He didn't give up on them. He didn't kick them to the curb. In fact, in 1 Corinthians 12, we hear about some gifts. These guys, boy, this congregation was a very, very gifted congregation, very blessed by God. So some gifts in there that aren't mentioned anywhere else. And if I were God, I'd have gone over here, I'd have scooped up every last one of those gifts, I'd have crammed them in my bag, zipped that thing shut, thrown it in my trunk, and driven as far away as I could possibly get. But I'm not God. God didn't do that.
So bad.
He didn't give up. He didn't give up on them. And you know what? The Apostle Paul didn't either. In fact, Paul wrote 2 very long letters to that church in Corinth. He spent more ink writing to this church than he did to any other church and any other individual. In fact, Paul wants to encourage them to say, guys, pay attention to where you're at. And that's why in 1 Corinthians 3:16, he tells them, listen, don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst? Paul's saying, look, guys, here's the deal. When you gather together for worship like this, God's here. His Spirit's here. His presence is here. His power is here. It goes beautifully with what Jesus promised in Matthew 18:20. He said, where 2 or more are gathered, there I am in their midst. It's a beautiful promise that He is going to fill the place where we worship. Now, we see this in the Old Testament. We see an example of this in 2 Chronicles, chapter 7, starting in verse 1. It says, when Solomon finished praying, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. The priests could not enter the temple of the Lord because the glory of the Lord filled it. How awesome. When all the Israelites saw fire coming down and the glory of the Lord above the temple, they knelt on their pavement with their faces to the ground, and they worshipped, and they gave thanks to the Lord, saying, He is good, His love endures forever. Then the king and all the people offered sacrifices before the Lord. See, God promises to fill the place of worship. In the Old Testament, back in the tabernacle, God filled the tabernacle that was built by Moses. God filled the temple that was built by Solomon. And God fills the church, which is built by Jesus. Like Jesus said in Matthew 16:18, on this rock, I will build my church. And it's important for us to understand it's His church. Bob Russell says that whenever we honor him by gathering together, his spirit is here. His power is present. Our worship has added weight. Our prayers have extra strength. And our singing gives greater joy because you are the temple of the living God. Henry Drummond once noticed that if you take a piece of iron and you put it in contact with an electrical field, it becomes electrified itself. And as long as it stays in contact with that electrical field, it will draw or attract other pieces of metal to itself. We're much like that as Christians. When we're in contact with that electrical field, which is the Holy Spirit, we should be attracting others, not to us, but to the love that God has shared with us. And make them realize that it's available for them. Be here. We always heard, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? That's not our job, guys. We are to make them thirsty enough that they want to drink. That's what we're supposed to do as Christians. You know, the church is a team sport. And we're to be one in Christ, united. We can't do that if we're like that church in Corinth. We can't do it if we're fighting, if we're arguing, if we're discussing these things over here that don't matter to anything. If we're majoring on minors, it's just not going to happen. Jim Putman wrote a book titled Church is a Team Sport. I love this book. He goes through an entire outline through this book showing how we are part of a team. Now the sad thing is, and he mentions this, sometimes we have players who will play for the other team. It happens. You know? They don't even need a bribe, necessarily. They just do it. But we are a team. Church is a team sport. And it doesn't mean that when you have your star player, you let them do 5 or 6 or 7 different things. It means each and every person has a part. Each and every person has a role to play. Now, let me ask you a really simple question, okay? It's a yes or no. Is Jesus the head of the body?
Yes.
Yes. Emphatically yes?
Yes.
Okay. Then guess what? Everybody other than Jesus is part of the body. Does that make sense? We are all part of the same. We're supposed to be part of the same team. Romans 12, it talks about those parts. The foot can't say to the eye, I don't need you. The hand can't say to the ear, I don't need you. We all have a different role that we play and a different function in the body. And we have to be doing that. Just like this, we need to be moving together as a team to be united. Because guess what? What typically happens is people come into church, and these Christians will come in and it's like a punch time clock, and they grab their little name tag that says Christian, and they go find their seat, right? Better not sit there, it's their seat. And they sit down, and it's a spectator sport for them. They're not involved, they're not plugged in, they're not in small groups, they're not doing anything Monday through Saturday to really show that they're a Christian, to really show that they follow Christ or love Christ. But on Sundays, they're pretty good on Sundays. They're pretty good, they're decent. And it's like Jimmy Evans said it. When he was really young, he said, I was good on Sundays. Jesus came back on Sundays, I think I'd be okay. But if he could have showed up on Thursday or Friday, I was dead. That wasn't going to happen. And he makes a point. God's a Thursday, Friday kind of guy. He's not going to show up necessarily at that point when we're all polished, like Bob said, we polish our halos and put them on Sunday mornings. It doesn't happen, guys. Here's the point. There are no bench warmers allowed. That's the second point I want you to get. No bench warmers allowed. This is a team sport. Ephesians 2:21-22 says this. In him, the whole building is joined together and rises to become a holy temple in the Lord. And in him, you two are being built together to become a dwelling in which God lives by his Spirit. The idea is that we are to grow together, to be joined together, to be built together. 1 Peter 2:5, to be a team, says this. You also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. So we're to be built together. Then when we offer our sacrifices, they're pleasing to God. Now, exactly does that mean? Well, that means I can't continue in my Christianity in the Lone Ranger kind of method. I can't have this Lone Ranger faith. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to get me anywhere. We need others to interact with, to interconnect with. Right? As iron sharpens iron, we need those interactions. We can only be as strong as those who we are ministering to and being ministered to and discipling. Yeah, I think about it this way. So you guys know I teach Krav Maga. Now I can go all by myself, and I can go beat up Bob. I don't mean Bob Harper. Bob is a body opponent bag. Okay, it's the upper torso. I can go and I can work on punches and kicks, elbows, knees. Not a whole lot I can do with Bob. Okay? I can do just so much. Okay? But I need somebody else. Because Bob doesn't have arms. Bob can't try to bear hug me. Bob is not going to come at me with a knife. Bob's not going to try to shoot me. Bob's not going to try to grab me. Okay? He's not going to try to hit me with a stick or a baseball bat. I need others in that training. And what we do as Christians is no different. It is a spiritual battle that we're in, that we fight. We need to be training spiritually every single moment. And we need others to train with. Now, how do we get away from this Lone Ranger faith? Well, let me offer one suggestion. Get plugged in. Let me tell you two specific areas. Sunday school, small groups. Sunday school is great. You're already here. Guess what? You're here. You're already here. Just show up a little bit early, grab a donut, grab some coffee, find a class, and get plugged in, get involved. We have great teachers. We have great classes. We have wonderful people. We have wonderful interaction that goes on in those Sunday schools. Get involved. We even have a class for 18 to 30s. Right? 30-ish. That was something you guys were saying a year ago. Hey, we want to see this. Well, guess what? We have it. We have it. Let's make this known. We have classes for the kids right on from here, if they can barely stand, all the way to, I think, about 120. Somewhere over that, I'm not sure that we have curriculum for that. But if you fall within that category, less than 120, we've got something here for you. We just do. So get plugged into Sunday school. But we have small groups as well. I am a huge proponent of small groups. I love small groups. That is, I think, is the meat and potatoes of the church. I really believe that if our Sunday schools and our small groups are thriving, the church is thriving, and when they're not, the church is not. Typically, that's how it goes. Because those are the moments where you get in and you sit down with others. It's a small group. That's how that works. And you can interact with the text. Hey, I don't understand it. You can ask questions. You can get some understanding from others in the group who have more experience, who have more knowledge. Again, it's that iron sharpens iron. That's how it works. That's what they're designed for. And we have some wonderful small groups. In fact, we have most of our small group leaders in this room today. There was one that I couldn't find. But you know what? And I'm probably going to miss some. So don't get upset if you lead a small group and I missed it, okay? Sorry, I'm going to do my best because I'm going off memory here, all right? Unscripted. We're going rogue, okay? I can tell you that we do have a marriage class. We meet on Wednesday night, and we meet on Thursday night. Because some people said, I can't be there Wednesday night. I said, well, how about Thursday? Yep. So we have 12 couples total. 6 on Wednesday, 6 on Thursday. There's plenty of room, guys. We got to go Friday, we'll go Friday also. So if you're married, you're engaged, if you're dating, you should be there. Just saying, you should. If your marriage is really rough and you're struggling and you're broken, like Bob was talking about, you should be there. If your marriage is great and things are going along real smooth, you should be there. If your marriage is amazing, you should be there. Because there are people sitting there who have been married for a couple years who say, boy, I wish I'd have known this stuff. And people for 30 years have said, I wish I'd have known this when I got married. I wish I'd have known these things 30 years ago. And they have insight to offer. Show up. Come and see me or Shannon afterwards. We'll give you more info. But we have other small groups. We have, let's see, Ron. There's Ron. Ron's raising his hand. He's waving. He's doing the Macarena back there. Well, maybe not. Hey, thanks, Ron. He's really getting into it. Ron Ireland, he has a small group. They meet on Saturdays. You want more information? Talk to him. grab him after the service. Get with him. Okay? We have Doug Bodie and Doug. Yes! See, we talk about this in our elders meetings. The person, gosh, I can't remember the name, but they sit 3 seats over, 4 back, and to the left. You know, Doug, I knew where to look. Doug Bodie, one of our elders, as well as Ron. He leads a class. Rock and roll agers, I guess 50 years old and up. If you're young at heart, Doug would love to talk to you. Wonderful class going on there. And then I already told you about the marriage class that's going on. We have Scott and Sherry over here. Yep, raising their hands. They have a group that meets here Friday mornings, 10 a.m. I believe. Harvesters, right in room 6, right in there. Trudy, I didn't find Trudy earlier. I don't think she's here. Trudy meets on Wednesday afternoon, or Wednesday mornings, I should say. Sorry, I believe 10 a.m. Right here, room 6. There's a grief support group. Mostly for widows, is my understanding, but I don't know if she's branching out into more than that. And I'm probably forgetting somebody. Okay, but guys, here's the point. There are groups you can get plugged into. There's things that you can do to interact, to be built together with others. We need to understand this is the Lord's church. It's not ours, okay? It was built by Jesus. That's the main thing we need to understand. You know, not many years ago, Tom Cruise came up with a movie, War of the Worlds. Anybody see that? That one? Tom Cruise? 6 people. Wow. Right, maybe 9 people. Okay. Well, I have the Blu-ray at home. I'll let you borrow. It was a good movie. It was actually a remake of the original back in the day with Perry Mason, right? Raymond Burr, right? Yeah. Nope. Oh wait, who? Oh, yes, thank you. Now, why am I thinking Raymond Burr?
Godzilla.
You're right. Yeah, roll. Okay. Well, anyways, I still messed that up. I'm sorry. Okay, so yes. Okay, so it wasn't with Raymond Burr. My fault. But here's the point I wanted to get to, and some of you, boy, you know this well, so you're going to know this question. I'm going to ask it. A spoiler alert coming up. Okay. Sorry, but it's part of the message. You just have to deal with it. Before the aliens started dying, they started dying. They died. Okay? Before they started dying, do you remember what they destroyed just before? Oh, you guys got it. I heard it over here. Somewhere? Yeah! They started destroying church buildings. Now, I'm not even going to tell you this is me. I'm going to tell you that I read this, and I read a commentary. I couldn't tell you who the guy is. I don't remember. He made this really neat connection, and I'm not doing this. I would believe that the director back then would have made that connection, would have made a spiritual connection. I don't know so much about the guy today that did that. But he says this. He believes that the director put that out there and specifically wrote the script in that way to show that these aliens, well, they could destroy anything. Anything man-made, they destroyed it, and nothing that men did would hurt the aliens. Not a single thing. Not a single bullet, no mortars, nothing. Nothing at all. But when they started destroying church buildings, this guy argues, God went to war. And they started dying. Now, I don't know, okay, if that's where the director was going. I don't know. I think it's kind of neat just to think of it that way. But if you do think about it seriously, it does match with what Scripture says. Because 1 Corinthians 3:17 says this. If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person. For God's temple is sacred, and you together are that temple. Now, Paul's not talking about a building. He's not talking about a building with, brick and mortar and steel and wood, what have you. He's talking about the body, right? Us, Christians. Guys, he's talking about us. He's saying, look, if any of you destroy God's people, he's not going to take it lightly. He's going to get involved. Notice who he's warning. Okay, he's not warning the Supreme Court. He's not warning judges. He's not warning politicians or lawyers. He's warning Christians in church. He's saying, pay attention. Watch out. We went over this a couple weeks ago with that admonishment of the ecclesia. That was a warning. He used that pretty severely, pretty sternly. In fact, Paul goes to this group here in Corinth, and there's a specific issue that he fusses at them for. He calls them out. See, they would have a potluck meal every Sunday. And they would have that, and then after that they would have communion, and that was part of their Sunday service, all right? Now we understand the concept of potluck. I love it. You bring something, everybody brings something, and then you share. You share everything that everybody brought, and you get some of everything. It's really great. They didn't do that. What they did was all the rich people showed up with, their steak and their lobster, filet mignon. They're all over here. That's as good as it gets for me. I don't know if there's better foods, all right? We got all their great food over here, all right? And all the poor people show up and they got bread, soup, and all the rich people shared with all the rich people. And all the poor people shared with all the poor people. And Paul calls them out. He says, you kidding me? And you have the audacity to take communion after that? And then this is what he says about that. 1 Corinthians 11:30. This is the warning. He says, that's why, of course, their actions, that is why many among you are weak and sick, and a number of you have fallen asleep. That is, a number of you have died. And he gives a warning also to the church in Galatia, because Corinthians isn't the only one. And this is where we get this nouthesia again, Galatians 5, starting in verse 19. The acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, nouthesia, I warn you, as I did before, those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. God takes it very, very, very seriously when people try to destroy his house of worship. He's going to respond negatively to any congregation, anyone. If sexual immorality is brought into the church, he's not going to look the other way. He's going to deal with it very, very severely. If discord or division enters the church, he's going to deal with it very harshly. He's going to crack that whip, and he's going to say no. He's going to draw that line and say, we're not putting up with that. We need to understand, guys, it's not our church. It's the Lord's church. It's his bride. It's not mine. It's not yours. Now, it's okay if you say, if you welcome somebody, or if you invite somebody, hey, come to my church this weekend. Come to our church and worship with us. That's okay. That's completely different than what I'm saying as a point, and that is the person who says, it's my church. And guess what, Steve? That's my seat. And you got to move. That kind of. So don't think it doesn't happen. I've been in those churches. I've preached in those churches. I've been a visitor in those churches. And this is my seat. Here's my church. I've been here for 67 years. Yep. My granddaddy laid the first brick outside and paved the parking lot with pudding. Yep. I was the person. That kind of person, dude, they're still alive. They are. They're still out there. They're kicking. And they're making a fuss and they're making a fight. You're going to play the music I want. This is my church. You're going to preach what I want. This is my church. And you're not going to invite people that I don't want here, because doggone, I don't want any riffraff in here. This is my church. That's a horrible mindset. But guys, it's real. There are people out there like that. That doesn't show the love of Jesus. That doesn't show compassion. Jesus looked at all the people and he had compassion on them. He didn't say, no, you're good enough and you're not good enough. And, oh, you might be okay, but I'm going to polish you up. He didn't do that. He loved, he had compassion. It's not your church. It's not my church. It's his. It's the Lord's church. It's his bride. Not mine. Not yours. We got to make sure that we don't fall into that trap, into that thinking. How do we do that? Well, it's quite simple. We remember, first and foremost, and we recognize it's his church. It's not ours. Second, get involved. Get plugged into Sunday schools and small groups. Start meeting with these people that are in these Bible studies. Be amazed at what you will learn and how you will grow in the grace and the knowledge of Jesus Christ, and how you can be able to minister and disciple others. And finally, work toward building one another up. That's what we're supposed to do. It's a team effort. Good job. Good job. Even if they drop the pass and you lose the football game, hey, good job. Good effort out there. Guys, it's the same concept. Leave it all on the field. Except for us, that field is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it never ends, and it never goes away. But the reward is out of this world. Guys, listen. We are the temple of the living God. Let's pray. Father, thank you